Okay, welcome into the roundtable. I am Brad Wakai. That is Tyson Gentry. We are here breaking down the Big Ten Conference, Tyson. I can't wait for this one. This is my backyard. This is my bread and butter, the Big Ten Conference, being a Penn State man. That is why I'm all decked out in Penn State gear. I got the shirt, I got my lucky visor. I'm ready to go.
I love it. This is Brad in his natural element. I mean, we're talking Big Ten football with a guy who conservatively probably, if I had to guess a year ago, put somewhere around 60 bets in on the Big Ten. I think you've seen
Oh,
every one of these plays or teams play probably every game, man. Brad lives and breathes the Big Ten. So on this one, man, I'll be backseat driving. I'll pop in when I think necessary, but I'm excited to hear what you got to say, man. You love the Big Ten. This is your shit.
yeah, I love the Big Ten. I love the SEC too, which we'll get to next week, which is your bread and butter because that's your shit. Um, but we were talking before the show, and as like an overview before we get into the different teams and the divisions, the Big Ten the Big Ten conference itself is the most predictable conference in general because one, you know who's going to be really good on each side of the conference. You have your blue bloods. You know who's going to be pretty bad each year. But the other thing is, you know how each team plays. You know what they're going to look like. Smash mouth football, good defense on one side. Other want to spread it out, and they constantly do that. Purdue, Maryland, Ohio State, and you have your big O lines and your big D lines, and you want to run the ball, and you get power eye formations. That's the Big Ten. It won't change. Probably never will change. It's just what it is.
And you know what's the best part about, because that's a true statement that you just made. But it doesn't matter who's coaching any of these teams. They're going to play the same way. It's like every regime is the same. It feels like at every school. And then you can almost predict it can be a nameless, faceless guy. But we know what the quarterback of Wisconsin looks like year in and year out. And we know, the quarterback of Purdue. Like we can predict the linebackers at Ohio State, Penn State. Like you go position by position, it's like, oh, I bet that guy's below average. And then you turn on the film and watch the games. We were right.
And you know, like the silhouette of them too. You're like Wisconsin, 6'3", doesn't have a good arm, just kind of throws it out there, but really good running backs. You know, Iowa, very bad quarterbacks. They're just really there just for show. And it's Ohio State, they always have the best. And everywhere else, you're kind of below average. Penn State, you're kind of hoping they're good. And Michigan, same. And it's got to go down the list. And it's like the same person. No matter what, you just plug them in. It's the same silhouette.
And so I think that's a really good way to get the people excited for all the hot takes that we're going to have on just shitting on this entire conference for being the same all the time. Why don't do yourselves a favor? Just turn this one off. Thanks for clicking. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Go listen to the Big Ten breakdown from a year ago. And it's the same thing.
Well, what we can't hate on is consistency. You know, you need consistency in life, and that's what the Big Ten provides college football. So let's jump right into it. We're going to start with the West. And for those of you who don't know, it's broken down into two sides of the conference, the Western Division and the Eastern Division, the Eastern being the premier division each and every year. So we're going to start with the West and work our way over to the East. So, and we've broken this down into three tiers: our bottom feeders tiers, our contenders tier, and then our blue bloods tier. So we're going to start with the bottom feeders in the West, and there's three teams in here, and we'll start with Illinois. 5-7 last year. Brett Bielema is the head coach. It's coming back for his second year. I think overperformed in last season, but got a new quarterback coming in from Syracuse, Tommy DeVito, 68th in returning output. You know, this is going to be a typical Brett Bielema team who wants to out physical and you push you around.
100%. Ryan Walters, right? The defense got a lot better. Now we're entering 2022 with, for Illinois, this is going to be a really good unit, I think. And as you said, we know what a Brett Bielema team is going to look like. They're going to come out there and they're going to punch you in the face. Chase Brown and Isaiah Williams, as weapons there, running back, wide receiver. You could do worse in the Big Ten, I think, as far as like some of these, like when we get to Rutgers after they lose Pacheco and Bo Melton, like it's bad looking over there. So for Illinois, for a bottom feeder, it doesn't look so bad. But at the end of the day, like 5 wins was kind of like, holy shit.
Especially 4 in conference. And Isaiah Williams used to be a quarterback too, and then he made the switch and turned into their best receiver. So he's quite a weapon. for them there. 31st toughest schedule, so they kind of get a cupcake Big Ten comparatively. So that should help them out a bit this season. But they're going to be a bottom feeding team even in the Western Division this year.
Yeah.
Now this one might ruffle some feathers, Tyson. I can just picture all the old heads, clutching their pearls and rolling over in their graves here. But we have Nebraska in this tier, and we said it before the show. They're like the Cowboys, man. Everybody thinks this team is so good and this program is so good, but we're not talking about the 80s and 90s. We're talking about what's happened recently, and this program is a dumpster fire in the Big Ten.
15-29 since Scott Frost took over. You remember how excited everybody was? How this was – he was going to save them, right?
Yeah, the hire.
Yeah, because he was going to – when he was quarterback, they were good, right? So then he was supposed to take Adrian Martinez and turn him into whatever. Like Mark Whipple's here to run the offense, but 3-9. And the defense was actually pretty good. I thought, like, for most of the season, that the offense is so bad, and it's going to stay so bad. And Scott Frost, when does he make it to the end of the season?
Well, we're shitting on him. I actually like him a bit this year for a couple different reasons. So to answer your question, I do think he makes it to the end of the season. If it's another 3-9 season with these expectations, I think they'll have to fire their golden boy. Like, they have no other choice than to fire him.
And then Matt Rule is going to come coach in Nebraska.
My God. Dude, he would turn this around, though. Dude, Matt Rule, what he can do as coach. I mean, Temple was good. Baylor was good under Matt Rule.
What he can do with Coach Collins. Let's pump the brakes on your boy.
Fair. But just to give an overview of Nebraska and why I'm, a little optimistic on them or bullish, they face the 47th toughest schedule, are the easiest schedule. They have all their big boys at home, so that should help. 7 returning offensive starters, and only 32.5% of the yards are returning, but that's because Adrian Martinez left. He was their leading rusher and obviously their leading passer last year at the quarterback position. So that's going to be a lot to fill. But they bring in Casey Thompson, who transferred from Texas. I think is an upgrade over Adrian Martinez. I don't care about the rushing numbers. This team should be better. They have pieces. Luke Reamer's an awesome player, I think, at linebacker, and they should be able to pressure the quarterback on defense with Garrett Nelson. 56.9% of their tackles are returning. So there's some sort of foundation there that I think they can build upon with their 7 returning starters back.
Does getting to a bowl game get an extra year for Scott Frost in Nebraska, or what the win total set at 7.5 right now? People are expecting Nebraska to be good again. We've been disappointed over and over and over again, 4 years in a row or 3 years in a row. Is playing in the Valero Alamo Bowl or whatever at 6 wins, 7, does that save his job?
Oh, for sure, dude. They don't want to fire this guy, man. He signed an extension after he went like 3-30.
But that's like, I just think that's so backwards. Like, it's ridiculous because it's one or the other. We can't, on one hand, say, well, Nebraska is one of the most decorated college football programs of all time and stuff, and then preseason champion these guys, and then they disappoint over and over and over again. And we're like, yeah, well, that's Nebraska. Pick. They can't. Those things are mutually exclusive. They're bad.
No, I agree. And I mean, 15-29 for Scott Frost is not a good record. He's been even worse in conference. I mean, he hasn't been good since he's taken over here.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, we'll break it down more when we get to money making time on bets that we may place on Nebraska. But I'm bullish on him. Clearly, you don't like him. I think there may be some bias there, but
that's only red.
As our last bottom feeder here, Northwestern. I know some people may be pissed at this. Like, what are you talking about? They won the Big Ten West a few times in this. Yeah, but they're a roller coaster, man. They're either really bad or they're really good. And last year they were really bad. I mean, they were awful. 3-9, 1-8 in conference. Just was not a good football. Their offense was atrocious and hideous to watch.
And
maybe
one thing,
in good form, they'll come back this year, but they're about
Pat Fitzgerald teams is that, like, they're going to have a good defense. Like, that's what he's brought. But last year their defense was trash.
So bad.
It was horrible. And there's major concerns there again. Even if the defense gets better, it's Ryan Helinski, who was a 4-star recruit, couldn't play at South Carolina. Like, I don't want to shoot on the kid, but South Carolina had a graduate assistant playing quarterback last year. Like, that's a thing. Look that up.
Yeah.
This guy transfers into Northwestern. that's supposed to be an upgrade. I just am failing to see where that is. And I love watching Northwestern. When Northwestern's good, it's good. It's good for college football.
And we know what they want to do, right? They want to run the football. They want to use their big offensive line. They want to out physical you. Pat Fitzgerald was a linebacker, played at Northwestern, was an unbelievable player too in college. Like amazing. I can't believe he's been here for 17 years as head coach. And what's amazing to me is at Northwestern in the Big Ten, his record is 109-90. Like that's his coaching record. Like that's amazing. Like he's a great coach. And what did we say to start this? The Big Ten is nothing but consistent. So when Northwestern has a bad year, what do? They have a good year the next year. Their win total is at 3.5. Stay tuned to Money Making Time to see where I'm going to go with that. And if you've been watching our shows, I think you may know where I'm going with this. But ultimately, I don't think they're going to contend for the Big Ten West. I don't necessarily know they're going to be at the bottom like they have been the past couple years, but they are still considered one of the lower level teams. I think maybe they can get into our next tier if everything goes right for them.
Yeah, I think if Northwestern was playing in a bowl game at the end of the year, I wouldn't be, beside myself wandering around like, how did this happen? But if they won 3 games again, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Let's get into our contenders tier here, Tyson. We have 2 from the West, and I think it's very just to put these in here. And let's start with our first team, Minnesota. And they've had some very, very steady increases in performance since PJ Fleck's taken over 5 years ago. Now he's going into his 6th season, 35-23. Not a record that's really going to jump out to you, but they've climbed from 5 to 7 to 11, which was their peak, and kind of trickled back. And last year they went 9-4. Some soft out of conference games, and did win one in the bowl game to get them there. But 6-3 in conference is very respectable. They did a good job, but they have Tanner Morgan coming back for what seems like his 6th year. And I think there's some expectations on this team. I said Nebraska has an easier. I forgot that Minnesota actually faces the easiest and the 64th toughest. I mean, this is a really soft schedule that they have. Now, 74.2% yards returning on offense. Mike Yurcich is coming back to be their OC, which was when they won 11 games. Like, this should be a team and an offense that hums and is ready to roll. What do you see with Minnesota going into the year?
One thing that I want to say about Minnesota that I love is last year only the service academies ran the football more than Minnesota, and they won 7 of their last 9. And PJ Fleck decided, I want to go in a different direction. Like, this isn't working. This doesn't get us where I want to go, because PJ Fleck, we know, wants to be at the top of the big. He wants to row the boat, brother.
Yeah.
He wants to row the boat. And sometimes when you have the biggest offensive line in college football, or one of them, and a good offensive, a good running back tandem there, you have to do what you got to do. The defensive line lost like 6 of their top 8 guys, but I think that the shift in focus for Minnesota is just something I'm so excited to see, because I don't think by any stretch of the imagination they're going to open it up. But again, it was like Army, Navy, Air Force that ran the ball more than them, and that's it. So if they go 65-35 on play calls, we're talking about an improvement. And on a team where we're really one-dimensional and still was able to win 7 of the last 9 games a year ago, I think Minnesota could be interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think they're going to be good. And it helps that they're going to have Mohamed Ibrahim back, their running back who got hurt last year. And his addition should definitely improve. And I said Yurcich. I'm sorry. I meant Soraka. We'll talk about Yurcich for Penn State, but Soraka was at Penn State. Now he's back at Minnesota. That's going to be a big plus for him. I think personally. Like, I think they're going to go back into the mold that they want at Minnesota and want under Fleck. So I'm high on Minnesota. The win total at 7.5. I think that's something that's definitely doable for them, especially coming off a 9-win season for them last year. But like you said, I mean, 6 returning offensive starters, 6 returning defensive starters. What is their identity this year that PJ Fleck wants to mold them into?
Imagine if they go 5 wide. Imagine if they go Maryland.
I don't know if they have the weapons, and normally they do, right?
They'd be running offensive tackles at backup wideout.
Well, here's the team that does go 5 wide. That's Purdue.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to spread you out and throw the rock. And Jeff Brahms in his 6th season here at Purdue, he was the old coach from Western Kentucky, and they scored like 45 points a game his 3 years there. Like, he wants to get up and run this thing, man. Aiden O'Connell's coming back for another season. He had 3,700 yards last year on 72% completions. 28 TDs, 11 picks, but man, dude, he aired that thing out and he looked good. Now, losing David Bell hurts. Rondale Moore previously, that hurt a little bit. I think it's going to be a lot to be asked of Aiden O'Connell to do this with weapons I think are going to be subpar. We'll see how good this kid is, but he's getting a lot of early preseason buzz.
I think that the emergence of Payne Durham at tight end could be something to watch out for, but you said it, man. Like this wide receiver core leaves a lot to be desired, and I think a year ago, David Bell was the most underrated wide receiver in college football, I thought. 93 receptions, like 1,300 yards. But I think the biggest loss for Purdue is George Karlaftis.
Mm-hmm.
Like 31 and a half. Like, this dude was insane, and there's nobody on that defensive line that's even close to that pedigree or caliber. At least it seems. So we'll see. But Brad Lambert going to Wake Forest, as well as losing George Karlaftis, like, Purdue wants to spread that thing out, and this year they might be forced because the defense was good enough for the last couple of years, and I don't know if it's going to be good enough.
And they've gotten the nickname as Giant Killers, right? Because what they do is they go in a highly ranked team and they beat them in some inexplicable fashion. Like it was Ohio State, the Michigan State, and then whoever else they want to knock out, Iowa. That's their pedigree and that's their nickname, and they have that belief they can do it. And this year they open up at home on Thursday night against Penn State, and it's just a massive game for both programs. So I think as far as both programs go and both seasons go for both those teams, that's going to be a tone setter for each, regardless of the outcome for each one. Win, it'll set each team on the right path. Lose, it could spiral both these teams in the direction negatively throughout the season. So Purdue's always going to be interesting, man. I mean, they could beat, have a bad season. All of a sudden they play Ohio State and they beat them somehow. That's what they do.
It's the best, right? I mean, that's the Big Ten, though. That's everybody. It feels like we're waving, we're in Iowa and we're waving, and we got a 3-win team taking Ohio State and deep into the fourth quarter. It's every week with these guys, right? Minnesota's taking down somebody. Michigan State always is good. It's just let's get going, man. Let's get this energy up here, huh?
Yeah, blue bloods of the West. And here's where we may differ a bit. Now we have two blue bloods of the West, and I think it's easy to see why. Like these two teams are always competing for the West with an opportunity to probably lose in the Big Ten championship game to whoever they play. Yeah, sometimes they win, but most of the time they get smacked around a bit. So let's start with Iowa. Honestly, in the past few years, this has been the cream of the crop of the West. This is the team to beat. I mean, Wisconsin's had some years, but it's really been Iowa. And Kirk Ferentz is there. He's the longest tenured coach in the FBS. This will be his 24th season, which is incredible. But he's got Spencer Petras coming back at QB, who I think absolutely stinks. I mean, the kid can't play. 1,880 yards in his fourth year. Only 57% completions, 10 TDs, 9 picks. That's just not good enough. That's just not good enough at all to compete, especially in the Big Ten. And I know they like to run the ball and all that, and their defense is awesome because it always is. You got to score points in college football now, though. Like the quarterbacks are too good, and there's too many good players who want to spread you out to beat you. So I think Iowa's going to have a tougher time this year, especially where they may be disadvantaged at the quarterback position in every single game they face in the Big Ten.
I think that's true. I think that might have been true for most of a year ago, right? Like, and most of, the last decade, I guess, if you really go through it. One thing that I think is important to note with Iowa is the run game that's always there in years past just wasn't as good a year ago. The offensive line was banged up, still managed to win the West, right? Like, it's impressive. And so now we have Gavin Williams and LaShawn Williams. We got the Williams brothers down there in Iowa.
Yeah.
They're both physical downhill runners. And the offensive line getting back to being healthy, the defense won't take the ball away as many times as they did last year. That seems tough to do, but they're going to be good because that's just who they are. And again, we can paint a picture of the Big Ten pretty much year over year. I expect Iowa to be a little bit worse than that 10-win mark. I would just guess here before the season started. But again, I think it's a bit foolish. They're just too physical to fail, if that makes sense. Like when they are hitting you and it's nighttime and it's, 30 degrees outside, you can be from Minnesota. It's tough to deal with.
Their defense is always great, and they have the studs everywhere, man. I mean, Jack Campbell is going to be incredible. I mean, first team preseason All-American looks right now. Riley Moss at corners, awesome. First team preseason All-American. Like, this is a suffocating defense, and they attack the football. It's just how good is this offense is going to be, and is an inept offense going to be able to take them to that 10-win mark and get them into the Big Ten conference game like last year? And if they do, can they perform better than getting fucking smacked by Michigan? I mean, that was an embarrassment.
That was bad.
Wisconsin, it's kind of similar outlook. I mean, honestly, they want to run the football. They want to be physical. They have bad quarterback play. Now, the difference is Wisconsin always has elite running backs. Monte Ball, Jonathan Taylor, obviously, who's there right now. Melvin Gordon, who's still playing for the Broncos. Like, run down the list of people that in the NFL were good. They probably went to Wisconsin. Right? Yeah.
Ron Taylor, I think.
That's what they do. And they're going to have good running backs this year. I mean, you love Braylon Allen. He's fourth team preseason All-American look right now. I think probably should be the favorite to win the West this year. My question with them is Graham Mertz, who's back. I think he's the worst quarterback in the conference. 2,000 yards last year, 59.5% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns, 11 picks. I don't think he's very good. And 5 returning offensive starters, that they do get 76% of their yards returning, which is good for 28th in the country. That should help out. What worries me about a Wisconsin team is their identity is their offensive line. They only have 57 offensive line starts coming back. That's not something we say very often about a Wisconsin team who wants to pound you so they can run the football and control the tempo of the game.
And they lose 7 starters on defense, right? So it's huge over there in Wisconsin, because we're talking about Graham Mertz, and you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, he couldn't have been that bad. First of all, they barely throw the ball. He threw 11 interceptions, had 4 fumbles. They laid an egg against Minnesota, right, in the last game of the year. If they win that game, they're winning. They're going to play for the Big Ten championship game. Just, kind of what Wisconsin seems to do. Like, sometimes at their peak, they can win 10 games, and then they go get shit on. Otherwise, they just let everybody down to save us, that 59-3 beatdown or whatever they were going to receive in the Big Ten championship game. I do like Braylon Allen. I do. I think that he's a very talented running back, but I am concerned with that offensive line, because I think he's not Monte Ball or Melvin Gordon or Jonathan Taylor, right? He's a really good running back, but those guys, year in and year out, it's like, oh, they have the best one in the country again. That's not the case this year. The quarterback sucks. The defense lost a bunch, and the offensive line lost a bunch. But Wisconsin has won more times in the last 5 years than I thought they were going to win football games. And again, I'm looking at this roster, I'm like, oh, they don't have any wide receivers. Like, there's no tight ends here. They'll just Wisconsin this whole thing.
And we look, 36% of their tackles returning, 3-4 starters back, but they have Jim Leonard, and Jim Leonard's fucking awesome at the defensive coordinator. He'll figure it out. Okay, let's jump over into the East now. We're done with the West. We'll come back to them when we get to money making time. We have all of our bets. But let's start into the East, and let's start with the bottom feeders in the Eastern Division here. Now we got to start. There's 3 teams in the bottom feeding tier, just like in the West. Let's start with Indiana, and they had a surprise season a couple years ago. I mean, they were really good. So, big surprise season, competing with Ohio State, beating Penn State, beating a lot of the big boys in conference. But last year, just all fell apart. It went 2-10, 0-9 in conference for like the first time in a decade. Just couldn't get anything going offensively. Their quarterback play was atrocious, and their defense got shredded up. I think Tom Allen's done a good job here. This is going into his 6th season. He was the old defensive coordinator here before, and I think losing his offensive coordinator who went to Fresno, that didn't help at all. But they do have Connor Bazelak coming in from Missouri, transferring in. I expect him to win the job. I don't know why he wouldn't. And that should increase their quarterback play. And they have a lot of transfer talent coming in. They have a lot of recruiting talent coming in. But the problem is what they have returning isn't great. 113th in returning output. Only 34.6 yards are returning. And only 47.7% of their tackles are returning. So not a great outlook on what's back for Indiana.
And they were injured last year. Like, Indiana had a ton of injuries, so you can point to that maybe as a reason they won 2 games. The offensive line gave up 29 sacks, and they averaged 3.2 yards a carry. We just ran through everybody in the West, and we're going to do it again when we get to the East. But you got to run for 4.5, 5 yards a carry in the Big Ten to have a fucking shot. To run for 3.2 yards a carry, you have no chance. Like, who are you going to beat? It doesn't matter how bad Northwestern's defense is, right? Like, that's why you're 0-9 in conference, because you can't run the football. So will they get back to their 6-win average that they had from like 2015 to 2020 or something like that ever since, Allen's taken the job? Maybe. But if the offensive line is that bad again, it doesn't – Tom Brady could transfer in a quarterback. Like, if you're on your back right away, it's not – there's nothing to be done, man.
Now, a team that doesn't run the rock, or very rarely, is Maryland, man. Like, they want to spread this fucking thing out and throw it all over the yard. And it's with good reason. I mean, they have Talia Tagovailoa, the younger brother of Tua, and he's been awesome since he's taken over for Maryland. Last year, threw for 3,860 yards on 70% completions or 69% completions, 26 tuds, 11 interceptions. Dude's been a star for him. Throws the rock around, and this Raheem Jarrett, the wide receiver, I think he's going to be awesome, draftable. He's going to have a good year with Talia. Now the question is, can Talia stay healthy? That's the only thing, because behind him they really don't have anything, so they're really banking on him to be healthy. Because what I've been reading about this Maryland team, what their coach Mike Lockley said, going into this fourth season, this is the most deep team he's had, the most talented team he's ever had. I think that bodes well for a team coming off a 7-6 record to make waves and make that next step in this guy's program.
Well, it would have been weird if he was like, this is the least depth I've
this
ever
team
had.
sucks. We could have pulled the Mac Brown. Remember last year? Everybody's like, North Carolina's going to be awesome. Like, I don't know why you guys say that. We're going to be awful. And it turns out they sucked.
He was right. But I think more than like Raheem Jarrett, right? You got Deshaun Jones, Dante Demis. Like, the wideout group is good. And, the quarterback is good. The defense is horrible. The defense is always horrible. They lost more recruits, right? We thought they were going to bring in some of these guys. We were getting excited that Maryland was signing, 4-star defensive linemen, and they lost almost all of them, right? From the beginning of the year to now. There's some talent, on the defense. You can look at the linebacker room. Look at the, I guess 2 cornerbacks I think are probably okay, but they'll go as far as they can throw the football, basically. Like, if they can put up 50 points a game, it won't matter. Not that will be able to put up 50 points a game, but like a bowl game to me feels like a pretty good bet for Maryland.
I agree with that. Now, Rutgers, interesting outlook here. Now, Greg Schiano's back. This is his 3rd year back since leaving Rutgers as head coach to take the Tampa Bay job in the NFL, and he's bounced around. Now he's back. And it's interesting, man. I mean, 8-4 in his 2 seasons there, but last year 5-8, 2-7 in conference. He's done a good job. I mean, this is the definition of the bottom feeder in the Big Ten. Like, they get worked. I think 2 years ago they had 5.7 points per game average in the Big Ten. Like, 5 points a game. Like, it's something horrible. But what concerns me about Rutgers this year is what I'm looking at is I don't know what you're going to get at quarterback, and it seems like they don't know either. So you have Gavin Wimsatt, redshirt freshman. Apparently he's the better prospect, but Noah Vidral, he was the quarterback last year in spurts, threw for about 2,000, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Doesn't seem like it's the best situation there. And when you only have 6 returning offensive starters, 6 returning defensive starters, it makes me question it a bit. But I don't know, man. Schiano's done a good job since he's been there. Apparently he likes his depth a lot on both sides of the ball. But we'll see.
Quote. And I think it's hilarious so far. So you've read off 6-7 stat lines of quarterbacks that we've gone through, and they've been the same.
It's Big Ten.
Yeah, 2,000 yards, he threw for 11 touchdowns and 10 picks. Everybody's the same. But one thing I think Rutgers has going for it, right, is that Schiano Juice came back in the building. And they hadn't had a 5-1 season since I think he left the first time, right? Like, the last time he was there might have been the last time they went 5. So he comes back, immediately kind of resets, I guess you could say, the bar. Like, 5 wins for Rutgers was really good. There probably won't be a 5-win team again this year just because we're kind of crushing some of these teams right now, but we're crushing them in the lens of the Big Ten.
Yes.
And those teams are much better than Rutgers, talent-wise, top to bottom, I would say. Personal opinion there, I guess. But Greg Schiano has this thing figured out. Like, for some reason, he can recruit to Rutgers. He can get the guys that he wants, but they're still like a year or two away, I think, from really being like, oh, this team could be 500.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a great spot or a great thought. And I think you're spot on with that. Absolutely. I think a couple more years of Schiano and you kind of like, man, you got to be careful if you're Maryland and Indiana because Rutgers may be jumping you. So contenders, interesting kind of spot here because I think, the Blue Bloods, which we'll talk about in a bit, these teams kind of fluctuate in and out of the contenders and Blue Blood spot. There's only one who's a true Blue Blood, and he will always be in this conference and in this division. That's Ohio State, which we'll get to. But what we have right now, just based on the recent performance over the past 5 years, Michigan State's in here as a contender for us. Really good season last year. And, Mel Tucker, this is his third season, has been awesome since coming over from Colorado and taking over from Mike D'Antonio. Last year went 11-2, 7-2 in conference, really had a shot to play for the Big Ten championship game and just lost a couple games late in the fourth quarter. Peyton Thorne was great at quarterback for him last year. 3,233 yards, 60% completions, 27 TDs, 10 picks. So a little different than that stat line I was reading out before. But the question with him is how good's he going to be in another season when people have tape on him, when people know what he likes to do? 5 returning starters, 68% of their yards are returning. So you do get some production back. And I think wide receiver Jaden Reed is awesome for him. But we'll see how good Peyton Thorne actually is without a running game, with obviously Kenneth Walker, the third, leaving last year, and an offensive line that's going to be, 90 O-line starts, not compared to what they had last year, where they were really, really good and experienced.
And apparently he wants to go by Ken Walker.
Ken or Kenny, I saw now.
So I guess just respect the man because.
Yeah, my fault. That's on me.
I mean, come on. But no, I think one thing Mel Tucker did awesome this offseason, maybe better than anybody besides Lincoln Riley, is they crushed the transfer portal. Like, they bring in Broussard from Colorado, Jalen Berger from Wisconsin. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you bring in Chris Bogle from Florida and Amir Speed from Georgia, right? They're not hitting Liberty, right? They're not grabbing the best player from one of these schools. These are, high-level SEC, high-level Big Ten recruits who either didn't get a shot or are looking for more of an opportunity. So I think one thing with Michigan State is to think they're going to win 11 games again is foolish. That was kind of, I think everybody was surprised, and a lot of it was because Ken Walker was amazing. Like, he was probably he was the most productive running back in college football a year ago. So obviously you're going to take a step backwards there, but I don't think this team is like, I'm not looking at Michigan State like I'm looking at, some of the other teams in where they were 2-3 years ago. I think this thing is actually to the point where I'm comfortable with Michigan State being a tier above some of these guys.
Okay, I like that. And that's a good point, because we saw them on the field against Ohio State, and they got thrashed. I mean, they didn't have any speed. They had nobody who could out-physical anybody on that Ohio State team. So Mel Tucker clearly saw a flaw, and he's like, you know what, we got to get better athletes. Now, is that going to translate? We'll see. I mean, they do bring 9 of those defensive starters back who couldn't keep up with anybody in that secondary, but 72.9% of their tackles are returning. So, they have a good foundation there on defense. My question is just how good their offense is going to be compared to last year without Ken Walker. Now, it pains me to say this. I can't put them in the Blue Bloods, but my alma mater, Penn State. And I think with good reason why we can't put them in the true Blue Blood category. I mean, the past few years, honestly, for Penn State's been very disappointing. And, last year going 7-6, 4-5 in conference was not
5-0. Did you start 5-0? Wasn't you number 4 at one point?
Yeah, it was. And Clifford got hurt. That's the thing. It just all fell off. And now Clifford's back for his 8th year at Penn State. I mean, Jesus, man. See the writing on the wall. But he didn't have a horrible season last year, man. I mean, 3,100 yards, 61%, 21 touchdowns, 8 picks. It's just Sean Clifford doesn't show up in the biggest moments or when you need him most. I mean, he was awesome against Ohio State in that game last year. But when they needed him most in fourth quarter, when we were leading, couldn't do anything, and ultimately couldn't convert on big third downs, and Ohio State won the football game. And that's kind of been the story with Sean Clifford. So in the biggest moments, when you need him most, he just doesn't rise up to the occasion. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, 75.3% of their yards are returning, and that's even with the loss of Jahan Dotson, who went to the NFL. So this should be a unit on offense primed to explode, especially on the ground, which they've been lacking the past couple years. So that's something I'm paying attention to. But here's what makes me nervous as a Penn State fan. We've always had these problems on the O-line. Only 36 offensive line starts, which is 118th in the country. And it's just so classic Penn State. It's just one of those things that they just can't address and get right. Or if they do, it's for 1 year, and we're at this point again where it feels like you're treading uphill or treading water and going uphill. And it's tough.
I think we're going to know pretty quick. Like you said, they play Purdue week 1, then Auburn week 3, and then go into Michigan on October 15th. Like if this team can win, if they win the first 2 of those games and then push Michigan, then they're back in the conversation, right? Then it's like, oh,
right.
These guys are the Big Ten, maybe, just maybe. As a Penn State fan, I want to put you on Nick Singleton, 5-star running back.
I love Nick Singleton. Stud.
He is going to crush. And it's been a minute. Journey Brown, we thought was going to be awesome. Unfortunate what happened to some of these guys. But this is a program where outside of health issues, really, we've gone Saquon to Miles Sanders into kind of a gray area because of those things. And now we have another stud 5-star running back coming in to Penn State to kind of alleviate some of that pressure. Because, Sean Clifford was horrible in the closing moments of games. The offensive line didn't do Sean Clifford many favors in a lot of those games, and the running game didn't do him many favors in a lot of those games. Granted, Sean Clifford shot himself in the foot just as many times as those guys seemed to hurt him. But, and another thing with Penn State, and I know you'll probably agree with this, at least I would assume you watch more of them than I do, but just have to be more disciplined. How many Jahan Dotson touchdowns didn't count over the last 2 years? All that dude did was catch touchdowns where there was holding, right? And we want to unleash this thing. We want to take the next step. If I'm Penn State, it starts with stop doing stupid shit.
100%. And that's been the thing. I mean, since Franklin's taken over, it has been disciplined. In the past few years, it's really gone off the rails with everything, man. I mean, special teams has been bad. Just the defense has not looked great. And obviously, without Brent Pry's moved on to Virginia Tech, they bring in Manny Diaz. I actually think that's going to be an upgrade for Penn State. I do not like Brent Pry, no matter what the numbers say. I saw a lot of nonsense that he was running on defense that I hated. But here's something that I'm kind of going against my rule here, Tyson, but 48.1% of tackles returning. And you know how I feel about that when that's a low number. I'm never worried about the defense at Penn State since Franklin's taken over. It's been good to great no matter what. And Joey Porter Jr. has been an awesome player since he's been involved at Penn State. 13 preseason All-American looks for him. I think he's going to be awesome. The secondary for once might be the strength of this unit, and the D-line's always going to be good. So that doesn't concern me. It's just what are you going to get from quarterback and what are you going to get from the offensive line to allow the running game to start flourishing again?
And the Big Ten is more so than any other conference, I think. We see the separation between good and great teams so clearly in the Big Ten, where it isn't – sometimes it can get muddy in the SEC. Sometimes Bama's in a dogfight with somebody you didn't really think. And then that happens in the Big Ten, but Ohio State always has a guy to pull them out.
Always. Exactly. Always.
And Penn State hasn't. Michigan hasn't. Michigan State hasn't. And it just looks like it might be the same movie, my friend.
Well, let's get to the Blue Bloods then, and the team that I think if it wasn't for last year, the past couple years, we would have put them in the contenders tier. But, Michigan made the playoff last year, won the Big Ten, and amazing season for them. I mean, 12-2 record, 8-1 in conference. They did get shellacked by Georgia, but Georgia's defense, I mean, my goodness. But Harbaugh finally seemed a little vindicated. One coach of the year, his 8th season. They do have a good record, 61-24 since he's taken over. The question I know you're going to kind of answer here is it going to be Cade McNamara who's the starter? I think it'd be crazy. I mean, 2,500 yards, 64% completions, 5 touchdowns, 6 picks. I think it'd be crazy if he didn't start, especially with 80.8% of your yards returning on offense.
And you're getting Ronnie Bell back.
And you're getting Ronnie Bell.
You're getting, probably going to be their best receiver this year, right?
Should be. Yep.
You imagine so. So I think it'd be Cade McNamara. The other guy in the race would be J.J. McCarthy. And don't put it out of the realm of Harbaugh-isms to kind of buck the trend here. Maybe there's something that he likes better with McCarthy. But this is the first time in a few years where I'm looking at Michigan and the offense doesn't look like it has, that many hole or question marks, right? Like I can answer, offensive line's good. The running game is going to be good. The quarterback actually looks like they might have somebody competent, and the wide receiver room looks good. And then on defense, you go through, they lose Aiden Hutchinson, who actually I'm pretty sure was a Heisman finalist, which is fun to say.
Finished second.
Which is fun to say. Mozzie Smith is a guy that I think at defensive tackle could be somebody to step up in that role. He won't be Hutchinson. He won't even be David Ajabo, but they're different players, and he might be good enough to really help out. What is it, Colson, the linebacker? What is his name?
Junior Colson.
Yeah, and I think he's a really good player. So those two on defense hopefully can hold it down if you're Michigan. But it just feels like even last year when everything was going right and they were winning, it just doesn't feel real yet.
Right, it feels like something's going to go wrong, and it did against Michigan State. And you're like, oh boy, here we go. Look at Michigan; they're going to collapse. But I think even though you have some good players in that defense, the question is going to be that unit. I mean, 4 returning defensive starters, only 47.2% of their tackles returning. So that's definitely a huge question mark for them there, and a change in defensive coordinator. So new scheme, new system that these guys are going to have to get used to, and that may benefit them with a lack of returners, so they're going to be able to learn it, something they haven't learned before, but we'll see. I mean, we got to get into the guy, man, or the guys. And that's Ohio State. I mean, this is their conference. It's going to be their conference for a long time. And last year, it was the first time they hadn't made the Big Ten. I think since Ryan Day's Big Ten championship, since Ryan Day's taken over, and it's definitely been the first time he hasn't made the playoffs since he's taken over in his 5th season now here as Ohio State's head coach. They're headlined by C.J. Stroud, 4,435 yards last year, 71.9% completion percentage, 44 touchdowns, 6 picks. He hadn't thrown a pass in college football prior to last season.
He's number 1 pick in the draft, right? I mean,
I think so.
It doesn't always go this way, right? Last year was Sam Howell, and you can kind of run through Tom Spencer, Rattler, all those guys, but C.J. Stroud is for real, like
big time,
and he's playing with. I kind of said it earlier that Maryland had a really good wide receiver, but it's not Ohio State. Jackson Smith and Jigba is maybe the best wide receiver in the country. At the very least, he's in the conversation, and he's probably leading that group. I think you could run through Marvin Harrison Jr., right? All of a sudden comes in monster, right? That Rose Bowl is the game that sticks out in everybody's head, and I want to point that out because it was the first time, Ryan Day didn't live up to expectations. They won 11 games in the Rose Bowl. Like that's the bar. We just talked about Rutgers raising it to 5 wins. Ohio State, to me, looks like they should be getting just as much love as Georgia or Alabama to win the national championship because I think C.J. Stroud is special.
Me too. I think he's unbelievable. I mean, he just has a great arm, sits in the pocket, steps up, knows where to throw it. He's really good. And the thing about them too, I mean, with this ridiculously sick offense, I mean, 75.5% of the yards are returning, and you name Jackson Smith and Jigba, but they got their running back, man. Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson. I mean, he's a stud. It's just, Travion Henderson, man, he's going to be awesome. He's going to run over everybody. He was a freshman last year. He took Master Teague's job, who's a senior.
They scored 46 points a game.
Yeah, and they might score 50. Like if they don't score 50, it's because they're pulling starters because they're up so big.
It has to be. And this is the only thing I think that you could nitpick at Ohio State. And I don't agree with this take, but like they don't have Chase Young or Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa. But we got so spoiled with them having those guys back to back to back that you kind of forget that doesn't happen where you have top 3 draft picks playing defensive end over and over and over again. So, yeah, they don't have those guys. But it doesn't look like anybody else in the conference does either. I don't know if anybody in the country has it. Like Alabama has Will Anderson, who's a monster. It's a little different thing.
Yeah.
Ohio State not having one of those guys, and that's like the thing you can nitpick, just shows how strong this roster is top to bottom.
And we'll see if, Zach Harrison, who knows? He may just blossom into that guy.
Maybe he is.
It's just, he's going to be their best pass rusher, at least on paper. And, he may turn into another monster. I mean, we don't know. The development there for the D-line is ridiculous. Minus 200 conference favorite I should have mentioned this earlier with some of the other ones. Michigan's plus 800. It's clearly everything's going to be so expanded because Ohio State's such a big favorite at minus 200. Penn State plus 1,400. And then if you want to go to the West, where really you're probably going to want to take a shot on anybody from the West because it's a one game, anything can happen football game. Wisconsin's plus 1,200. And if you like Iowa, they are plus 2,000. So those are your numbers. As we kind of close this thing out, that's our Big Ten preview, and we move over in the money making time. Just want to throw that out there because Tyson and I have been given our picks for conference winners. Now, minus 200 is very juicy, so let's go ahead and get in the money making time. Are you going to lay a minus 200 on this conference? I mean, it feels like free money. It feels like you're going to win, but it's a long time to tie up anything that's a minus 200. Are you going to lay that?
You bet. You bet I'm going to lay it. Ohio State, to me, last year was a down year. Like, they got physically overpowered by Michigan for 4 straight quarters. I don't believe that happens again. That game felt like an exercising of demons for Michigan, but I think that things could get pretty bad for them this year. If Cade McNamara can't put up 35 touchdowns in the air, 33 touchdowns in the air, 5 of them against Ohio State, I think Ohio State's out for blood. And I think Ohio State's going to run the table in this conference. And I think Ohio State's probably going to run the table in the regular season.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're going to go undefeated. I think they're going to win the Big Ten conference going away. I think they're going to make a statement after what happened last year. Yeah. And they're going to run the table, and they're going to look really, really good doing it. Okay. Let's move over. Let's go back through the West as we give our win total predictions and everything like that. So let's start with Illinois in the West. We'll go alphabetical. Win total 4.5. Overs juiced minus 130. Under is plus 110. Are you taking anything here?
No, and I want to so bad. I believe that they can win 5 games, but it's gonna kind of suck to listen to probably, but I'm gonna stay away from a lot of these bottom Big Ten teams. One of them is going to end up winning 6 or 7 games, and I have zero confidence in who that's going to be.
I know, and with so many, so there's 14 teams in the Big Ten. It's so easy to get sucked into, we got so many. And we've taken shots on a lot throughout our previews. I think the Big Ten, you got to be a little bit careful. But I am going to take a shot in our next team, and that's Iowa. I'm going to roll the dice here, and I'm going to go under 7.5. And you may be going, you're crazy. But the overs minus 105, the unders minus 115. I think that's telling you that Vegas doesn't think Iowa's going to be very good this year. Now, is it a 3-game difference compared to last year where they won 10 games? I don't know. I'm going to take a chance that it might be, because I think the western side of the division or the western side of the conference, I think there are teams that are going to be better this year, namely Northwestern, Nebraska, and Minnesota. I think it may be hard for Iowa this year. So I'm going to take a chance on under 7.5 with Iowa. Are you going to take anything here, Tyson?
I'm going to take Iowa over. Okay. Mainly because you just talked me into it with you going 7.5, and I got to do something. Can't go back.
Baby.
But I do think the running game is going to be better. And I think the defense won't take the ball away as much, but I think this defense can play with anybody in the conference with the exception of Ohio State, and you never know what can happen. In these, they're going to either play a noon kickoff game this year, where there's one of those season, or they're playing a night game somewhere. As long it's the Big Ten, man. And I think even losing games that I think they should win, they're probably going to sneak somebody. And I think 8 wins is very doable because, again, it's just going to be a lot of downhill football. And I think they're just better at it than a lot of these bottom feeders.
Minnesota, interesting. Coming off a 9-4 season, win total set at 7.5 right now. They have the 64th toughest schedule in the country, the easiest in the Big Ten by far. 74.2% are yards returning. Overs at minus 130, under plus 110. You taking anything here?
No, like I said, this is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch because we're going to be, all the smoke is we're going to figure this team out on the fly. Like, they're going to look way different. And if they're going to look way different, I would rather bet them on a week-to-week basis over teams than hold a ticket on them winning 8 games.
I'm going to take them over 7.5. And this is my dark horse to win the West.
Ooh.
I think they might win the West this year. So I think you have to win at least 9 games in the Western Division to do it. I think they have the capability. I wouldn't mind even taking a shot on them to win 10 games. And I may give that out in our social once I think about it a little bit more, unless you have the number on that. But I'm going to take Minnesota over 7.5 right now, for sure. While you're looking that up, Tyson, what's moving to Nebraska? Or you got it?
Plus 650 for Minnesota 10 wins.
Plus 650, 10 wins. I'll think on that. I'm going to think on that. I'm going to think on that. But I'm leaning yes, but I don't want to give that out officially yet. For sure, over 7.5. Nebraska. Now, win total also at 7.5. Over -110, under -110. Last year, 3-9. I know you were talking shit on him, Tyson. You going to do anything here?
I'm going under. Even? Like, if we're even, I'm leaving, dog. And this Nebraska team is not winning 8 games. Like, I just don't see it. Run through the schedule, and I know that you can say it's easy, but it's easy on paper. And those teams get to play Nebraska. So they're looking at that one like, okay, I don't think Scott Frost keeps his job going into next year. I don't think this is going to be a very good football team. I think, again, we're doing it and just to be transparent, part of it is that I've won, I've had good luck betting the under on Nebraska win totals here, and I'm going to keep that train rolling.
I'm going over. And I'm ready to be like, you idiot. I'm ready for it. I'm going to take a shot here, and it's a lot of it has to do with, I think, a buy low spot here on Nebraska. What do you mean? Why would you do that? I think Casey Thompson, we have no clue how good this kid could be compared to what they've had at Nebraska previously. And I think Adrian Martinez stinks. I think they were hamstrung by him. I think he limited a lot of what they could do, especially through the air. Whipple's coming over as OC. I think that's going to simplify the game a lot for Casey Thompson. And I think this team could actually be pretty good in the West this year. I'm going to take a shot on over 7.5 wins. They were super unlucky last year. They outgained their opponents by a ton, lost so many one-score games. I think their luck goes in this favor, and they win at least 8 games this year.
Their luck goes in the favor by 5 more games?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Games.
Northwestern, Pat Fitzgerald, defining Pat Fitzgerald's here in Northwestern. Win total at 3.5, overs -150, unders +125. Are you interested in playing anything on the Wildcats?
I mean, gun to my head, I think they win 4 games, but no. Like, I don't have any confidence in them winning. Like I said earlier that if they were playing in a bowl game, I wouldn't be like pacing around my house, but I'd be far more surprised than if they weren't playing in one. And if I only get like a 2-game cushion on what I'm thinking, I mean, really a game and a half. It's dire straits over there at Northwestern, man. And I know you love these numbers here because you get to manipulate the market a little bit.
Well, I'm taking over 3.5. You already know where I was going. I mean, I do it every time. I see a team that was bad last year, a coach that's good. They won 3 games last year. That's like the worst they've done in a long time on defense, and their offense was inept. Give me this shit all day. Like, I don't care. Yeah, they 22nd toughest schedule. Fine. But they have their 85th returning output, 65th, 65% of their yards. Like, come on, man. This is a 4-win, 5-win team, and they might make it to a bowl again, like you said. And if they do, I'm easily cashing that. Come on, give me over 3.5 on this one.
You're going to cash that thing in week 9, you're saying?
I hope so. That'd be nice. That'd be very nice. Purdue Boilermakers. 7.5 is their win total. Overs +125. Unders -150. Big juice on the under there. Last year went 9-4. Anything you're playing here, Tyson? This is an interesting one.
I hate to do it, but I think I'm going under on Purdue.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, they just lost so much, right? You're running through, they lose, to me, like I said, the most underrated wide receiver in the country, and they don't have anybody ready to replace him. We're looking at a question mark at tight end that we're hoping makes that next step. There's been a lot of good tight ends in the Big Ten that haven't made a damn difference in the passing game for a lot of these teams. Losing George Karlaftis, losing coaches, right? I mean, it's a ton. You lose your defensive coordinator after you kind of start rolling on defense. To me, I just think they lost too much. Like, even if everything stays the same, they won games on some of the premier athletes that they had a year ago, and those guys are gone.
I'm going to join you in this. We haven't done a lot of team ups in the Big Ten here, and it's making me a lot of mono going. I feel like, if I lose the Big Ten bets to you, I'm going to feel like a fucking idiot. So
Oh, no,
I'm jumping on board with this. Under 7.5, I think for a reason. They lost a lot, and it looks kind of good on paper. Oh, but 54th in turning output, and it's mainly due to their offensive line starts. But I don't know. I don't see it for this Purdue team this year. And yeah, they have a great tight end, quarterback who should be awesome on paper this year. But I'm going to take the under. I think the West is improving. There's other teams that are going to beat Purdue this season that didn't beat them last year. All right, round out the West here. Wisconsin. Win total at a flat 9, over plus 110, under minus 130. That's an interesting number that's set on FanDuel. What are you taking here?
If it was 8.5 or 9.5, I could be persuaded one way or the other here. 9 is just so funky, man, because you said it. You think 9 wins would win this side of the Big Ten, and maybe Wisconsin ends on 9 wins. And I think that's a very real possibility here. For me, we ran through everything with Wisconsin, that it feels like Wisconsin. It's just Wisconsin is a 9-win football team. I don't want this.
Yep. And they won 9 wins last year, and they've gotten worse in terms of what's returning. I'm not going to take it. And I think you said it right. If it was 9.5, I'd probably play the under and play even more juice than what it's at. But, I've played a lot in the West here. So I have kind of an idea that I think the top's going to come back to the middle. Middle teams are going to rise more than what it was last year. So that's my prediction. I played a few of those outcomes. I'm not going to play the Wisconsin one. I'm going to stay away from that. But let's get over to the East now. Starting with Indiana, win totals at flat 4, over minus 120, under plus 110. Went 2-10 last year, 0-9 in conference. If they even win 2 games and do their average, you're right at that number. You play anything with Indiana?
Brad, I think that we're about to get back in lockstep here because I think we're both going to take Indiana over 4 wins. Are you rocking with me on Indiana 5 wins, dog, or what?
Of course, bro.
Yes.
My brother's alma mater's Indiana. Come on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Tell the people why. We're connected.
My brother is an alumnus of Indiana. My cousin actually currently goes to Indiana. She's a Hoosier. I think this team is due for a bounce back. I actually think Connor Bazelak, their quarterback, is going to give them an improved play they haven't had in a couple years.
Upgrade at running back. Shivers from Auburn. It's better than 2 wins, man. I mean, it's got to be.
It's got to be, man. I mean, they were so unlucky last year with turnovers and close games that they lost, too. It's just – I think it's going to bounce right for Indiana. And the nice thing is, too, if it's 4.5, I wouldn't touch it. You get a 4, we push on this, only at minus 120. I'll roll the dice on that in a gamble here. Maryland. Whoops. I'm intrigued by this. We kind of ran through this when we did the breakdown. Win total at 5.5, minus 135 for the over, plus 115 on the under, coming off a 7-6 season. This seems like a smash play for me, Tyson. Are you doing anything with Maryland?
Maryland's making a bowl game. Like I said it in the thing. I said Maryland feels like a safe bet to make a bowl game, and then you tell me that all they have to do is to make a bowl game is to hit their over. Okay. And I think that they're definitely going to make a bowl game. And I think this team, off of 7 wins, I mean, we ran through the rosters and all this stuff, but it comes down to how well can you throw the ball. And like we talked about, when you have top 4 quarterback in the conference, you have a shot to kind of beat some of these worst quarterback teams. What there is a lot of. There's 10 of them. If you're counting at home, there's 10 other ones that are worse than Talia Tagovailoa. Yes. 6-7 wins feels a lot. I felt like this line should have been 6.5, to be honest with you.
Me too. I'm all over this. This is a smash play for me. This is one of my favorite bets in this conference. It feels like the line's set way too low. And yeah, you got to pay a little juice, minus 135, though. I mean, give me a break, dude. This is the best team that Maryland's had since Loxley's taken over. They have the best quarterback they've had in a long time at Maryland. They got it. They should be in a bowl game. They should be. So I think they will be with 6 wins. We hit our bet. Michigan. Win total 9.5. Over juice to minus 125. Under plus 105. Coming off a 12-2 magical season for them last year where they were Big Ten champs. Are you playing Michigan at all in this market?
I think Michigan's going to win 10 games, man. And that's why, again, these lines in the Big Ten are just weird. They're every other conference that we've run through so far, I think has made more sense to me. I like I was saying, I don't think there's very many holes at all in Michigan's roster. And that's not the case for everybody outside of one. And I think they're better than everybody outside of one. And yes, the non-conference schedule, they could get tripped up at somewhere in there, but like they get Penn State at home. Tone setter. Start the season middle of October. As soon as we really get into conference play, you get Penn State coming to your house. That could be a huge momentum boost for Michigan just to kind of power them through until, they get their asses kicked in the rematch.
I'm not playing Michigan. I can't do it. I honestly, if I was going to take something, I would lean under. We just haven't seen two successful seasons by Michigan build on top of each other. But I'm not going to play it at 9.5. It's very, like you said, they can win 10 games. Absolutely. And so I don't want to take the chance that they do. And then I lose my bet on that by playing a risky under there. So I'm going to stay away. Michigan State win total 7.5, overs -120, unders +100. They won 11 games last year. Can I interest you in any Michigan State action here?
I would, and I would love to. But everybody that we mentioned, right, and when we're running through Michigan State, transfers from other places that we haven't seen play from Mel Tucker. We get very solid quarterback play coming back at Michigan State, which hasn't been a thing since like Connor Cook. So that'll be intriguing. But like they couldn't cover anybody last year. And yes, they get transfers on that defense. Maybe they get after the passer better. Maybe that's an upgrade at corner. Or maybe these guys weren't playing at their schools for a reason. That's always a possibility with these transfers. And I would rather wait and see, and again, play these guys more on a week-to-week basis than hold the season long.
I always have to take a shot on some plus monies with these. I'm going to take a shot on under 7.5. And I think it's for what you said for the latter. We saw the players in the program not be able to keep up with anybody's speed related. And the ones who transferred, like you said, can they actually play or they're not playing for a reason? I'm gonna bank on the latter. I'm gonna bet on the latter, and I think this team wins 7 games.
What if I told you they had a cornerback transfer from Georgia named Speed?
Well, I'm sure he has a lot of speed. Can he cover?
Oh, okay. I thought you said they were slow. I was trying to give you a little something to go off of.
Ohio State. Now, this is interesting to me, Tyson. Win total at a flat 11, -130, under +110. Are you breaking your finger hitting that over button?
Over. Oh, I think this team's going to go undefeated in the regular season. I just do. Like, I think they're rolling in, probably sitting number 1 in the college football playoff poll at the end of the year. I just can't get over the fact that last year was a year where Ohio State slipped up twice. They don't slip up twice, and they won 11 games, and they, very realistically could have won 12 if they don't have some of these mistakes. And again, CJ Stroud never took a college snap, right? And he walks in here and he throws for 5,000 yards. I've been giving out Heisman picks, man, and he's the one I like from the top group. Like it's the worst odds on the books right now, but it's for a reason. Like if this team goes undefeated, he's winning the Heisman.
I'm with you. I mean, 11, that seems wrong, man. You go 11-2 last year, and it was a disappointment. Now we're talking about this team going undefeated, and it's got the same number as last. Like, what are we doing here? I'm taking the over every day. This is the best bet in the conference that we've discussed so far. Makes no sense why I'd set at 11.5. Or at 11. If it's 11.5, I'm taking that as well. You're right there. I don't care. Everything you just said, I don't need to reiterate it. The one thing that may cause some concern: 14th toughest schedule. That's just due to the fact you got to play Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State. But, that's really it. It's
Notre Dame too, right? Or no.
Yeah.
They are playing this year. Okay. Yeah.
Week 2, I think. Ohio State's going to slaughter that team. Dude, that's going to be a bloodbath. I'm telling you, whatever that number is right now, take it. Because apparently Notre Dame's getting banged up right now. And Ohio State is going to – woo. All right. Let's keep it moving here. My Penn State Nittany Lions. Interesting number, a flat 8. There's not flats in this, right?
This doesn't make any sense. Like, why?
Over -145, under +125, coming off a 7-6 disappointing season. Where are you going with my Nittany Lions?
I'm going to watch you first. before I do anything. You're going to talk me into one way or the other here. So my money is in your hands here, Brad.
All right, well, I'm going over 8. If it's 8.5, I'd be not touching it. Matter of fact, I'd probably play under. Sitting at 8, you're telling me we can go freaking. Matter of fact, if it was 8.5, I'd probably go under. 8, I'm going over, baby.
Oh, come on. The extra half game.
Said.
If they win the first half against Michigan, man, you're in the money.
Well, apparently they were doing a lot of that last year. I saw it. I was losing it. But here's the reason. A lot of yards returning on offense. In the next phase, in the year 2 with the offensive coordinator, there should be a little bit more progression and growth with the running game. I think that's a huge thing that Penn State needs to get back to. It's a big identity of theirs when they've been successful. They were pretty unlucky last year in terms of just holding leads and then they just kind of fallen apart for them. I think they changed that. I think they finished 3rd behind Ohio State and Michigan, and I think they win 8 or 9 games this season. Hopefully 9.
I'll play this with you
okay.
if you will play the Montana Grizzlies to win the FCS National Championship with me.
Ooh.
Number 3 in the preseason poll.
Are they really?
You bet.
I'll play that right now. I'll root for them.
Let's do it. All right, we're riding together, boys. We're locked in. We got the home teams here. And guess what, man? If they lose, it's because we already know why. So we're not going to be all fired up that he sucks again, right? It's going to be like, damn it, we're stupid.
Rutgers, last one here. Win total of flat 4, over -110, under -110. Last year, 5 and 8. Do you play anything here with the old Scarlet Knights?
I won't, and I want to. I think they could win 5 games again, but like, it's just I'm not really interested in pushing. Like it doesn't do. I'm not excited if Rutgers wins 4 games. I'm not victory lapping, and I'm not super pumped. And that seems like a really likely scenario. If anything, I would say, are they going to win 4 games? And that's the question you have to ask yourself.
Right. I agree. I'm not playing anything on Rutgers either. Not playing anything with them. So that's going to do it for our money-making time session. And do want to give a kind of a PSA here. We're taking our lines from FanDuel Sportsbook. So if you're looking at yours and you don't play with FanDuel and you're like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Mine's at 4.5 or mine's at 5.5 or 8.5, 9.5, 11.5. We're getting ours directly from FanDuel Sportsbook. This is where we've been placing our bets through the FanDuel Sportsbook app. So if you have something different, feel free to contact us. Honestly, our social medias are open. If you're like, well, I have this number and it's different than what you guys are talking about, that's why you contact us.
And I play different numbers. Like I have, we look at the FanDuel things and we go through that, but I have a completely separate sportsbook that takes care of all the gambling in my state. And so a lot of times I'm texting Brad like, hey, this is a 2-game difference on my thing here. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're working together on this thing. We just take it from FanDuel. It's the easiest thing for us. We love the FanDuel Sportsbook app too. But that's going to do it for our Big Ten.
No free shout outs.
That's going to do it for our Big Ten preview. We appreciate you guys listening to this one. If you haven't listened to our other ones, go check out our ACC, Pac-12, and Big 12 conference previews on our YouTube page or Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Next week, we're breaking down the big boys. Your conference, Tyson, the SEC. That's going to be a heavyweight. It's going to be awesome.
It always is, and we thought this one was going to take a long time, and we're over an hour here, so it's been longer than all the other ones, but like we might have to do a damn 2-parter for what we have coming up in the SEC. We don't have the Rutgers to talk about. Maybe
Vandy, but that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it's going to be awesome. But as always, we appreciate you guys listening. Like, subscribe, and share this out with your friends or other listeners. We really appreciate your support. Follow us on Instagram and to contact us there @_the_roundtable_pod_. TikTok is the same. And you can follow us on Twitter @TRT_pod. Till next time, SEC next week, NFL coming up next week as well. But until next week, all, peace.